The final cut. King Charles quietly erases Camilla's children in a move that leaves the palace changed forever. London, February 16, 2026. He didn't shout, he didn't summon the press. He picked up a pen, and with one stroke ended everything. In one of the most consequential acts of his reign, King Charles III has signed a confidential royal decree stripping Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, the adult children of Queen Camilla, of every remaining privilege tied to the British monarchy. The decision, described by those with inside knowledge as precise and utterly without mercy, was finalized in the early hours of the morning, inside the King's private study at Buckingham Palace. No official statement accompanied it. None was needed. The evidence spoke for itself. Tom and Laura's disappearance from recent court circulars, the sudden revocation of their access passes, the withdrawal of patronages, and the quiet shuttering of institutional connections left nothing to interpretation. Two figures who had long orbited the monarchy without ever truly belonging to it had been swiftly, silently, and permanently cast out. This royal decree arrives amid a broader campaign of structural tightening within the House of Windsor. 3 weeks prior, Charles authorized the final reclamation of Royal Lodge from his embattled brother Prince Andrew. That was followed on February 5 by a royal directive terminating all financial entitlements and title associations for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, following their unsuccessful attempt to re-establish parenting rights over Archie and Lilibet within the UK legal system. But today's action cuts to a different kind of bone. For the first time, Charles has moved against Camilla's own side of the family, decisively ending years of public frustration over what many saw as his quiet tolerance of her children's growing proximity to the throne, despite mounting evidence of overreach, poor judgment, and institutional harm. The king has drawn a firm red line, one senior palace official told the Telegraph under anonymity. This is no longer simply about protecting William and Catherine. It is about the sanctity of the institution itself and bringing an end to the era of unearned access to power. The immediate trigger. The catalyst arrived on the evening of February 16th, during a primetime interview on London Talks Tonight, in which Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes appeared to promote a charity gala. What began as a soft public relations appearance deteriorated rapidly into veiled provocations, and ultimately, what palace insiders have characterized as a direct assault on the line of succession. Tom, grinning beneath the studio lights, described Prince William as an actor with no depth, rehearsing a legacy for public consumption. Laura, dressed sharply in a navy suit and crimson lipstick, added her own cut. Catherine is polished, certainly, but let's not mistake PR for substance. The monarchy doesn't need a mannequin, it needs leadership. The broadcast detonated online within hours. Hashtags including #ProtectTheCrown and #ExileTheStepchildren trended across the UK throughout the night. Traditional tabloids like The Express branded the pair as parasites, while broadsheets including The Times ran damning editorials urging Charles to protect the dignity of succession by distancing himself from those who exploit its proximity without having earned a place within it. The response from within the institution was equally swift. By midnight on February 15th, a circle of senior royal advisers, among them the Earl Marshal, Lady Penelope Wexham, the Lord Chamberlain, and Sir Hugo Ellington of the Privy Council, had drafted a joint communiqué urging the king to act with permanence. The group cited specific provisions within the royal codes of affiliation, prohibiting non-bloodline associates from publicly commenting on matters of succession or state duty. Several advisers invoked the spirit of the late Queen Elizabeth II, who was once said to have privately warned Charles that familiarity breeds corrosion, a phrase that circulated again among palace staff this weekend, this time in direct reference to Camilla's children. This should have happened years ago, a former courier posted anonymously on X. Tom and Laura were always just outside the gates, yet they carried themselves as if they lived inside the throne room. The midnight verdict. Sources confirmed that Charles had long resisted drawing a hard line. He had made private assurances to Camilla that he would shield her family, emotionally and institutionally. But this time, the breach was irreversible. At 1:42 a.m. on February 16th, King Charles summoned Tom and Laura to a private audience in the small chamber adjacent to the main reception suite. No staff were present, no secretaries, no press corps. A single guard stood post outside the door. Those briefed on the exchange described the atmosphere as clinical and glacial. No raised voices, no confrontation, only silence and then intention. Charles reportedly began by replaying the full interview on an iPad. He then delivered a single line: "You were guests of this institution, but you mistook the guest room for the throne room." He then produced a sealed document stamped with the crimson royal crest. Its contents, now confirmed, included the following provisions: revocation of access to all royal residences including Clarence House, Sandringham and Highgrove, effective 5 a.m. on February 16th. Immediate suspension of all personal security arrangements. Removal from all ceremonial guest rosters including Trooping the Colour, Commonwealth Day, Garter Day and Remembrance Sunday. Termination of all honorary roles, among them Laura's art patronage, affiliations and Tom's royal dining appointments. Revocation of travel exemptions, including diplomatic vehicle access and military transport rights. Prohibition against using any royal associations past or present in commercial or media ventures. Notably, the document was backdated to February 10th, one day after Charles completed the formal financial separation from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The implication was unmistakable. This was not a reaction. It was a blade that had already been sharpened. A nation responds. In the hours that followed, Britain awoke to the quiet but unmistakable scent of delayed reckoning. The palace issued no formal statement. It didn't need to. Tom and Laura's erasure from the court circular, the abrupt removal of their names from charity rosters and ceremonial lineups, communicated everything with the precision of a surgeon's incision. The media, detecting blood in the water, moved immediately. The Daily Clarion's headline on February 16th thundered: "Charles exiles Camilla's children. Public rejoices as palace cleanse begins." For years, Tom and Laura had navigated the edges of royal life. Their presence at select events dismissed as harmless ceremonial gesture, but behind palace walls their sense of entitlement had quietly expanded. In early 2024, Tom drew sharp criticism for allegedly using royal connections to negotiate a lucrative book deal tied to palace cuisine, complete with a foreword originally intended for Queen Camilla, a project halted by palace aides on grounds of conflict of interest. Later that year, Laura faced accusations of incorporating restricted Sandringham archival artworks into promotional material for her private gallery without authorization. The Art Chronicle called it an egregious case of blurring privilege with personal profit. Public patience continued to thin in April 2025, when Queen Camilla herself was quietly cautioned by the Royal Advisory Council. Though no formal record was released, insiders confirmed that Charles received clear advice. Non-blood family influence required containment before it destabilized the crown's standing. For a time, Tom and Laura retreated, absent from royal gardens, summer tours, and spotlight appearances. The matter seemed resolved. Until February 16, 2026. The timing was not accidental. The London Talks Tonight interview ignited fury not only for what was said, but for when it was said. Britain was still absorbing the weight of Charles's January decision to sever all remaining ties with Harry and Meghan, revoking UK-based security privileges and royal housing access. The January 28 finalization of Prince Andrew's asset recovery case, which saw him permanently removed from Royal Lodge, had already established a new, uncompromising tone from the Crown. For Tom and Laura to choose that precise moment to disparage William and Catherine on national television was interpreted universally as an act of deliberate institutional sabotage, not against individuals, against the monarchy's emerging identity, streamlined, disciplined, and intolerant of those who feed at the table without earning a seat at it. Commentators across the political spectrum aligned in condemnation. What Tom and Laura did was spit on a ladder they never had the right to climb, said royal historian Sarah Kinsley. They mistook access for authority, added Sir Ian Bridgman, former political attaché to the Crown. In a monarchy, that is a fatal miscalculation. Even traditionally progressive outlets such as The Guardian published pieces in support of the King's Quiet Act, noting that the modern monarchy must be anchored not merely in image, but in discipline. Ipsos UK polling in the immediate aftermath revealed 79% supported the revocation of Tom and Laura's royal privileges. 84% believed Catherine had been targeted unfairly. 71% stated Charles should have acted sooner. What might have been read as a PR crisis became something closer to a national catharsis, a systematic erasure. Buckingham Palace offered no formal condemnation, but the machinery of repudiation moved with quiet efficiency. Security staff assigned to Tom and Laura were reassigned overnight. Their names were removed from the Commonwealth Day guest list. All pending honorary invitations, including Laura's scheduled appearance at the Royal Portrait Awards, were discreetly withdrawn. Queen Camilla cancelled a visit to Kensington Children's Hospital, fueling speculation of profound emotional fallout behind closed doors. Within 72 hours, the system had reclassified them from extended family to liability, from guests to ghosts. According to documents reviewed by the Royal Gazette, Charles's edict also contained specific provisions designed to insulate William and Catherine from further interference. Tom and Laura's names were removed from all visitor access rosters across Kensington Palace, Adelaide Cottage, and every estate associated with the Prince and Princess of Wales. They may no longer attend any event at which William or Catherine serve as primary patrons, unless personally invited by the Crown. All shared expense accounts linked to Camilla's schedule were closed, and previous travel reimbursements processed under her name were reversed retroactively to January 1st. A confidential memorandum circulated to the Royal Communications Office directed that Tom and Laura be excluded from all future press briefings concerning the modern monarchy, succession, or institutional continuity. They were not merely removed, they were institutionally dissolved. The portrait sharpens. The deeper irony of Charles's decree is that every figure he removes sharpens the image of those who remain. Catherine, Princess of Wales, emerged from this episode not diminished but elevated. Her composure in the face of public attack drew wide praise, the Times describing her as the iron veil of modern royalty. William, long depicted as a passive heir awaiting his moment, was recast in public perception as the moral compass of the firm, rising not through declaration but through sustained dignity. Social media, historically hostile terrain for the monarchy, tilted unusually favorable. TikTok videos filed under #LongLiveCatherine surpassed 60 million views within 48 hours. Even commentators from younger demographics, previously skeptical of the institution, voiced unexpected solidarity. They insulted the one person who shows up, smiles, and never puts a foot wrong, one user posted. Catherine is Britain. Charles had not merely defended his heir. By removing the noise, he amplified the signal. And behind the scenes, sources indicate Princess Anne played a pivotal role in reaching this outcome. Anne told Charles plainly, one source said, "If you allow this to pass, you allow the crown to decay from within." He listened. The Queen's silence, for all the noise surrounding the fall of Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, the most piercing sound has been the one that never came, Queen Camilla's voice. The woman once vilified by the tabloid press as the other woman had spent 2 decades earning her standing beside Charles. She endured sustained media assault, public rejection, and deep institutional resistance to become queen consort. And yet, in the aftermath of her children's sudden removal from the monarchy's inner world, Camilla has said nothing. Not to the press, not to her allies, not, it appears, even to her husband. That silence, palace insiders now acknowledge, says everything. In the days immediately following the February 16th decree, Camilla cancelled 2 scheduled public engagements, a literacy award luncheon in Eastbourne and a visit to a cancer treatment ward in Oxfordshire. Her private secretary cited seasonal illness, but behind closed doors, insiders confirmed she was shattered. She wasn't simply hurt, one senior aide revealed. She was hollowed out. Her entire world shifted in a single night, and Charles did not give her the opportunity to intervene. According to multiple palace sources, Camilla learned of the final decree only hours before it was signed. She had been aware of the growing tensions and had quietly attempted to steer her children away from public exposure following previous missteps. What she anticipated was a rebuke. What she received was an institutional disappearance. Camilla reportedly remained in her private suite at Clarence House, speaking to no one but her longtime dresser. When Charles returned that evening from a strategy meeting with Princess Anne and Lord Alderton, the two exchanged nothing but a glance, no words, no confrontation, only a prolonged look of shared grief and deliberate restraint. For years, Camilla had navigated the delicate tension between her devotion to Charles and her maternal instinct to protect Tom and Laura. She never sought to push them formally into the monarchy, but she never fully separated them from its warmth either. At charity events, they stood beside her. At Sandringham and Balmoral, they were welcomed as family. Her wish for them to be embraced was never a secret, but Charles's tolerance, it turns out, had invisible thresholds, and when her children crossed them publicly on camera, at the monarchy's most exposed moment, the king was forced to choose his queen or his crown. He chose the latter. This was not a betrayal of Camilla, one historian close to the royal archives observed. It was a recognition that even love cannot override the line of succession. Those closest to the queen say she now exists in a kind of quiet, suspended state, not in exile but not fully at peace. A consort bound by loyalty to a throne that has just turned away from her blood. Any public defense of Tom or Laura would be interpreted as defiance of Charles's authority and, by extension, a fracture of the unity the monarchy depends upon. So Camilla's silence is not passive, it is calculated, painful, and necessary. She has lived through Diana's public devastation, through Charles's long rehabilitation, through the Sussex Rebellion. She understands, perhaps better than anyone, what it costs when internal fractures leak into public view. She may grieve privately, but she will not break the institution she spent a lifetime helping to rebuild. Her birthday portrait, released quietly on February 15th, captured everything. Camilla, alone in a garden, no family, no Charles, no regal flourish, only thorns in the background, and a gaze trained on some distant, unreadable horizon. In the aftermath of this unspoken storm, something between Charles and Camilla has shifted into something colder, more formal, more contractual. They continue to appear together at scheduled functions. They exchange pleasantries in the presence of staff. But the warmth once carefully rebuilt between them has visibly dimmed. Multiple staffers report that Camilla now takes her meals alone and has moved several of her morning appointments to rooms away from the king's study. The couple has not appeared together outside palace walls since February 14th, when they visited a retirement center in Kent. They are now two people fulfilling an obligation, said one former palace chef, not two halves of a shared love story. Camilla's silence is not weakness, it is sacrifice. She has chosen, or been compelled to choose, the monarchy over motherhood. And in doing so, she has laid bare one of the institution's most brutal and enduring truths. To wear the crown, one must bleed in private. In the long, echoing corridors of Clarence House, a queen walks carrying grief the world will never witness, not because she is without feeling, but because she understands too well that the moment she weeps in public, the crown absorbs the damage. The fall of Tom and Laura. They were never royals by blood, but for 2 decades, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes lived within the gravitational pull of royal privilege. They dined at palace tables, vacationed at grace and favor estates, and stood within whispering distance of the throne. Now, in the cold grey of late February 2026, they stand entirely alone, stripped of access, protection, and relevance, not by legal process or public scandal, but by the most devastating verdict of all, a sovereign's quiet decision to simply stop acknowledging their existence. There was no trial, no statement, only consequences. The fallout was immediate. Tom was scheduled to attend the launch dinner of a culinary arts scholarship in Soho on February 20th. He never arrived. Future bookings under his name evaporated, and 3 commercial sponsors are reported to have suspended their partnerships. Laura's gallery, once praised for its curated connection to British artistic tradition, found itself flooded with protest correspondence, cancellations from 2 foreign investors, and calls for institutional disassociation ahead of her spring exhibition. Both have vanished from public life. Sources confirm Tom has retreated to a modest country estate in Wiltshire, a property inherited from a godfather and unconnected to the royal portfolio, living with minimal staff and severing contact with every circle that once sustained him. Laura is reported to be staying in a private flat in Notting Hill. Rarely seen, her social calendar, once an unbroken sequence of receptions and cultural events, entirely empty. They've been erased and they feel it, one former aide said. Not just from the palace, but from the entire ecosystem they relied on. Perhaps the most jarring blow is financial. Though never formally included on the civil list, Tom and Laura had long benefited from discretionary royal funds linked to Camilla's budget, covering event security, travel reimbursements for appearances made under her banner, and PR and staffing assistance for Royal Foundation-aligned engagements. All of that has been terminated. Royal finance analysts estimate Tom stands to lose approximately £180,000 annually in indirect institutional support. Laura faces a projected shortfall of around £120,000 in subsidized logistics and access. Neither is destitute, both hold independent assets and networks. But the prestige economy in which they once operated has ceased to exist for them. The public response has been merciless. Tabloids labeled them the freeloading pair. Op-eds cast them as emblems of unearned entitlement. Social media delivered its own sentence. Hashtags including #GoodRiddanceTom and #LoyaltyToCatherine surged across TikTok and X. Remixed clips of the February 16th interview circulated as viral parody content, one version accumulating over 12 million views mocking Laura's mannequin remark. Tom ultimately deactivated his public accounts. Laura's official website went dark. They were never prepared for exposure at this level, a former publicist observed. Because they never earned it, they borrowed it, and now they've defaulted. Perhaps most painful of all is what has not come, no word of support from their mother. Camilla, navigating the impossible geometry of her own position, has neither defended them publicly nor reached out in ways the palace might detect. Those close to the siblings suggest the silence cuts deepest for Laura, who had long regarded herself as her mother's emotional counterpart. But palace dynamics permit no divided loyalties, and for the Queen Consort, any visible gesture of sympathy risks being read as insubordination. So Tom and Laura have been left to fall alone without a hand to catch them. The monarchy that remains, the grey mist settling over Buckingham Palace, carries with it the final exhale of a storm that reached into the monarchy's most private chambers. But what surfaces in the aftermath is a singular chilling clarity, delivered not through celebration or proclamation but through silence, exile, and the unyielding assertion of royal authority. The House of Windsor, battered for years by scandal from without and fracture from within, has drawn its boundary lines in stone. For Charles, the emotional toll of these decisions is undoubtedly significant. He has severed ties with individuals he once welcomed into the inner architecture of trust, not merely for Camilla's sake, but in pursuit of the fiction of blended harmony. Yet in choosing the institution over personal feeling, he has accomplished something even Elizabeth II in her final years hesitated to do: the systematic removal of every figure, blood or otherwise, whose presence compromised the clarity of succession. It was never about retribution, noted Sir Malcolm Stowbridge, a senior aide to the Lord Chamberlain. It was about integrity, and integrity in the royal world demands sacrifice. That sacrifice has restored a kind of equilibrium. For years, William and Catherine absorbed the friction of indirect criticism from those trading on the coattails of legitimacy they had never earned. Now the atmosphere around them has been cleared. No shadow siblings, no whispered rivalries, only the heir, the princess, and the unobstructed path ahead. 3 internal memos, recently leaked from within the royal household, outline the institutional logic behind this wider campaign. Eliminate non-essential figures from ceremonial structures. Reinforce the authority of the direct line. Charles, William, George. Restore public confidence through visible consistency and discipline. Some insiders now refer to this governing philosophy as the Windsor Reset, a recognition that survival in the modern monarchy depends less on compassion than on deliberate, unflinching control. What Charles has not said, but what everyone now understands, is that this has been a coronation achieved through subtraction. With each figure removed, William and Catherine ascend higher, unchallenged, uncompromised, and untouchable. Post-purge polling by Ipsos UK and the Evening Standard confirms it. Catherine now holds an 83% favourability rating, the highest recorded for any royal since Elizabeth II in 2012. William is viewed as the most prepared heir to the throne in living memory, with public trust accelerating following his recent diplomatic engagements. Their children George, Charlotte, and Louis are now shielded not only by bloodline, but by the deliberate institutional will of a sovereign who has swept the field clean in preparation for them. In short, Charles has not merely protected the crown, He has pre-constructed the dynasty. As Tom Parker Bowles walks unseen across the Wiltshire countryside and Laura Lopes draws her blinds against the press in Notting Hill, their chapter in the Royal Chronicle closes without fanfare and without footnote. No royal biographer will dedicate volumes to their legacies. No portraits of them will hang in ceremonial halls. Their names will fade from the guest lists, the program indexes, and ultimately from institutional memory itself. And that perhaps is the most devastating consequence of all, to be forgotten by the very institution you believed you were a part of. The monarchy that emerges from this reckoning is not softened by sentiment. It is not diluted by familial compromise. It is leaner, sharper, and harder. The buffer zones are gone. The stepchildren, the celebrity adjacents, the uncles who once occupied grace and favor cottages as though they had earned them, all of it cleared. In their place, a single luminous center radiating outward from the Wales household, protected by a monarch who has demonstrated, without ambiguity, that he will cut to the bone to preserve its light. The crown is not made of gold, a courtier was overheard saying. It is made of ice. And now, after years of bending under the weight of sentiment, of loyalty, of the quiet hope that love might be enough, Charles has finally broken what required breaking. The crown endures, colder than ever, but unbroken.